Hey, it's Sam from Sugar Spun Run, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make one of my favorite cakes of the season. This cranberry cake is so light, soft, melt in your mouth. It has a glorious cinnamon sugar topping, and I think you're really going to love it. The first thing you want to do is get your oven preheating to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, now grab yourself a large mixing bowl, and to this we're going to add our butter. You'll need 2/3 cup of softened unsalted butter. 2/3 cup is kind of an awkward measurement, but you should have markings on your butter that tell you how to cut it. That is 10 2/3 tablespoons of butter. Of course, I will also list the gram measurements over in the printable recipe, which I always provide in the description. We're gonna cream this butter with our sugar, and we're using quite a bit of sugar for this recipe because I was kind of going for a sugared cranberry feel. Cranberries are pretty tart, so it's nice to have a little bit of sweetness to balance them. We'll add 2 cups of granulated sugar, and we're going to beat together the butter and the sugar until they're well creamed. Of course, for today's recipe, you could use a stand mixer, but I will be using my electric hand mixer instead. Okay, once our butter and sugar are nicely creamed, I'm going to slide that out of the way, and let's talk about our eggs for a second. This recipe uses four eggs, but we're going to separate the whites and the yolks because one thing that sets this cake apart is it has a deliriously light, pillowy, soft, melt in your mouth texture. We achieve that texture by separating the whites and whipping them to stiff peaks and then folding them in. It's an extra step, but overall this cake isn't very fussy. There's no icing required, so it's very much worth the time to do the whites separately. So let's separate our eggs really quickly. You're going to use 4 large room temperature eggs. Make sure you have a clean, dry mixing bowl set aside. We'll drop our whites right in here and we will whip them to stiff peaks right in that bowl. I always just break my egg in half and pass the yolk back and forth between the shell. Once I've dropped out all of the white, I'll drop the yolk in a separate dish. I dropped it in this dish, but really I could have put it right in the bowl with the rest of my batter because that's where it's going next. The egg white is going to go in our other mixing bowl. And we'll repeat this with the rest of our eggs. It is very important that you don't get any yolk in with your egg whites or they won't whip properly. Number 2, let's bring this over. Number 3, and you may notice I'm not cracking the eggs right over my whites bowl because if I were to get even a little bit of yolk in there, I would have to toss out all of my whites and start over. So I always keep these to a separate dish. Number 4. All right, we're not going to whip up those whites yet. They're going to sit over there, and we will add these yolks right into our mixing bowl. All 4 of them. We'll also add our flavoring at this point. So for this cake, I like to add a little bit of almond extract. It adds a nice brightness, makes the cake taste very fresh. We're going to add 3/4 teaspoon of almond extract, and we're also going to balance that with a little bit of vanilla. We'll add a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and we'll stir these ingredients together until they are very well incorporated and we have a nice uniform batter. All right, now the next ingredient you're going to need is 2/3 cup of full fat sour cream. I love using sour cream. It adds such a depth of flavor to the cake and it also just helps with the texture and the moisture of it. I recommend using a full fat sour cream. Alternatively, you could use full fat plain Greek yogurt instead. We'll stir this in. And we'll slide this out of the way. And now let's grab a separate bowl for our dry ingredients. We're going to start with 2 cups of all-purpose flour. We're going to add just 1/8 teaspoon of baking soda. And we're also going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. We're just using table salt today. And then we'll whisk these ingredients together so everything is nicely combined. Let's bring back our butter mixture. And we are going to gradually add the flour mixture to our wet ingredients. I will usually add this in like 3 parts, and we're going to stir on low speed after each addition until just combined. Add our next bit. And our last bit of flour. Okay, once everything appears to be nicely combined, we'll grab our spatula and we want to make sure we scrape the sides and bottom of the bowl. We don't want to see any streaks of flour remaining. It's important that our batter look nice and uniform, which this one's pretty close. A little bit of mixing with the spatula will get us there. Okay, now we're going to set this aside again, and let's grab our egg whites. Now we need to whip these to stiff peaks, but we are not going to use those beaters. They would never whip because these have, you know, butter and oil and everything on them. So I have a clean pair of whisks. Pop these in here, and we are going to whisk the eggs to stiff peaks. This will just take a couple minutes. I always start on a lower speed and gradually increase the speed to high. Okay, let's take a quick look, see if I'm happy with how these are. I'm gonna go just a little bit further with these. Okay, that was about 2 minutes of mixing. They look great. Nice and billowy, stiff peaks, which means if I pull my spatula out, that peak that forms holds its shape. It doesn't fall back in on itself or dissolve. You also want to be careful that you don't go too far with the egg whites because then they could also start to break down. So let's bring back these ingredients here, our batter, and we'll just plop all of the egg whites into the bowl. It's a professional term. Make sure to get all those egg whites out. Don't use your mixer for this part. We're going to use our spatula and we're going to gently fold the ingredients together until they're combined. Now the dough is a little bit stiff, so be gentle doing this and just fold the ingredients. It will become thinner as we incorporate the egg whites. This extra step of beating the egg whites separately works really well for a great texture. It's a technique that I use in my olive oil cake and in my sour cream pound cake, which actually inspired this recipe. And it just creates a texture that it's amazing. It truly melts in your mouth. Now, once my egg whites are mostly incorporated, I'm gonna go just a little further. Now I'm going to grab my cranberries. We are using 2 cups of cranberries. These are fresh cranberries. They've been rinsed, they've been dried, they've been picked over for any bad ones. We'll add these in. And we'll continue to fold everything together until those cranberries are well distributed and the egg whites are completely incorporated into the batter. You can see I'm just doing a folding motion. I'm not vigorously mixing. I want to be gentle with those egg whites. And scraping the bottom, scraping the sides. All right, once everything's nice and uniform, we'll grab our baking dish. You'll need a 13x9 baking dish for today's recipe. I chose to line mine with parchment paper. You could grease yours instead. We are going to be serving this right in the pan we're baking it in. We're not turning it out as if it were like a layer cake. So you don't need to be able to, you know, turn it out onto a baking sheet or anything like that. A cooling rack, I mean. So let's go ahead and we'll spread this batter evenly into the pan. I just like the parchment pan for easier cleanup, and if I ever wanted to remove this cake from the pan after it's cooled completely, it would be much easier to just lift it out with a parchment. But that's something I love about this cake is, you know, you don't need to decorate it. It's very transportable to any kind of family gathering. You just bring the pan. And it smells so good. Every last bit out of there. And we'll spread that batter evenly into the pan. All right, and remember I said I was going for sort of a sugared cranberry feel. Well, to help achieve that, we're going to take a little bit of granulated sugar and just lightly sprinkle this over the surface of the cake. And I just used enough sugar to just lightly cover the top of the cake. It's just about a tablespoon of sugar that you'll need, maybe a little bit more. I don't like to overdo it. All right, we will transfer this cake to the center rack of our preheated oven. There it's going to need to bake for 30 to 35 minutes. When the cake is finished baking, you'll notice it has a lovely golden brown color, and a toothpick inserted in the center should come out clean or with a few moist crumbs. This one's finished baking, so we're going to let it cool until it's no longer too hot to, you know, burn your tongue before we dig in. All right, this cake's still pretty warm, but we're going to go ahead and dig in and cut ourselves a nice little slice of it. I can just feel how soft this cake is. And I haven't even touched the interior of it. It's amazing. You're really going to love this one. And that is how you make this fun holiday cranberry cake, or maybe we should call it a sugared cranberry cake. Either way, I think you're going to love it. If you try it, please leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. I always really do love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. All right. The Tart cranberry, sugar topping, super incredible plush crumb. You are going to love this. I love this. Oh my gosh. Grab yourself a large, yes?
Are you filming?
Yes, I'm filming. Slide, oh, I'm going. This bowl, everything's better in this bowl. Oh, runaway cranberry. I just had a moment.